We are back with the 4th episode of My Hero Academia Season 7. After last week's episode saw the long-awaited reveal of Yuga Aoyama as the UA traitor, this episode sees the aftermath of the reveal and Class 1A trying to get through to Aoyama and bring him back to their side. Before we begin, if you like this video and want to see more like it, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel as it really helps out. My Hero Academia is owned by Kohei Horikoshi, Shueisha, and Studio Bones. Please support the official release when you can. Episode 4 of Season 7 covers from Chapter 338 to Chapter 340 of the manga. The episode picks up right where Episode 3 left off, with Class 1A deciding that they'll use Aoyama as bait to lure All For One out into the open. Class 1A tells Aoyama that soon he'll be able to take their hand and join them again, but Tsukauchi decides that Aoyama and his parents need to be taken away for questioning and more info on All For One. That's when Aizawa calls in and says that despite everything that's happened, he has no intention of expelling Aoyama from UA. He then tells the staff of a plan he's put together that will entirely rely on Aoyama, and they only have 1 week to carry out. Aoyama and his parents are then taken away. We then cut to the 1A dorms Heights Alliance, and the students agree that they will take down All For One and take back everything that they've lost together. Also, this frame is surprisingly well done and adapted from the manga panel pretty much perfectly. We then see Deku and Ida making their way to the support course's development studio to get their costumes and equipment repaired. There's a recreation of that scene when Deku went to upgrade his costume during the latter half of Season 3, and we finally get the return of Hatsume, who has been extremely busy operating and maintaining the UA barrier. Deku shows Hatsume his mid-gauntlets, which he wore during the Dark Hero arc and are the upgraded version of the full gauntlets developed by Melissa's shield and used by Deku in the first movie. Hatsume says that since Deku and Ida are obviously in a hurry, it's impossible to recreate them with their full strength. She then shows Deku a new mechanism she's been working on for when UA needs to evacuate. She says that she's doing all of this because she knows that soon, the Hero Corps students, including Deku, will be fighting their final battle that will decide the fate of society itself. So the least she can do is help out in her own way to ensure the oncoming war is won. Hatsume then gives Ida new Ingenium armor, and Deku new gauntlets, though these aren't as powerful as the old ones. These new ones, however, come with new and repaired Air Force gloves. Deku and Ida then join the rest of 1A. Todoroki says that Aoyama will definitely come back to them because at the end of the day, Aoyama is the one that knows what he wants more than anyone, more than All For One thinks he knows. Class 1A splits up into teams and officially joins the search for All For One and his allies. We then get a quick scene of Nejire, Tamaki, Fat Gum, and Ryukyu saving civilians and sending them to Shiketsu, which has become a protective stronghold much like UA. They also note how the time to prepare for the final war has now come. We cut to All Might in a police station accompanied by Hawks, Tsukauchi, and even remaining pilots from when Star and Stripe fought Tomura Shigaraki. All Might comes to a conclusion that with the combined strength of All For One and Shigaraki, there's no way that they can win. So what they have to do is split the two of them up. On top of that, they'll have to get rid of Dabi and all the other villains involved with Shigaraki and All For One, separate the enemy's forces and crush them one by one. However, this will all only be possible if Aoyama is able to lure All For One to them, and for that, it's up to Aoyama's teacher, Shota Aizawa, to get through to him. We then cut to Aizawa in an interrogation room with Aoyama on the other side of the glass. A doctor tells Aizawa that it doesn't seem like All For One tampered with Aoyama's body in any way. Aizawa realizes the reason All For One didn't rig Aoyama to explode like how he did to Lady Nagant in Season 6 is because the seed of extreme fear All For One planted in this young boy's mind was more than enough to keep him in line. Aizawa asks Aoyama if he's scared of All For One, to which Aoyama says yes. The latter says while he knows his classmates believe in him, the more faith they put in him, the less faith he has in himself, because he feels like even if he does return to their side, if All For One were to appear before him, he might make those bad decisions all over again. That's why he just wants to give up and die alone in isolation. Aizawa continues that even if UA is lenient, the things Aoyama did will always be there with him, and even when this war is over, UA might not take him back, so he must fight. All he can do is fight. Aizawa says that using Aoyama as a pawn for victory might make them no better than All For One, but he refuses to let him die, tormented by his actions, not as long as he's a teacher of the Hero Course and as long as Aoyama is his student. Aizawa tells Aoyama that even if he feels horrible and wretched, to go walk alongside his friends who extended their hand towards him, because the road ahead is when they'll all walk down together. We then get the title of the episode, The Story of How We All Became Heroes. And that brings us to the end of the episode. Nope, that's actually not the very end of the episode. There's a quick after credit scene of two general study students calling out to a certain student that it's time to get ready. That certain student being Shinso, who hasn't appeared since Season 5, I believe? I'm probably wrong on that. Now, we are finally at the end of the episode. The preview for next week's episode shows the 1A students making their last preparations for the war, and Deku and Aoyama having a mysterious meeting. Overall, this is a contender with episode 3 for most emotionally impactful episode of the season. The voice acting was absolutely amazing this episode, and the soundtrack hit especially hard. And like I said earlier, the art this episode was surprisingly manga accurate and extremely well done. I give this episode an 8 out of 10. I'm really excited to see how everything is going to be adapted in the rest of the season, as this is the last episode before the final war against All For One and the villains finally begins. But that is all for my recap / review of this week's episode of My Hero Academia Season 7. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for watching, and that's all from me.